Mike, is Kemi right? I mean, is cancel culture just literally cancelling common sense?
I mean, it's an extremely strong point of view from her, an extremely strong statement. She says in the Sunday Times this morning, launched an extraordinary broadside against politicians of every stripe, the police, the media, the NHS and universities. I mean, that's right across the board, OK? And her actual quote is, she says, the cowardice of those in positions of influence was worse than the ravings of the militants. What she means by that is that, OK, if you get raving militants, they're part of our society and they're raving militants. But if people in positions of authority who are running the offices of state are also condescending to extremist views when it comes to transgenderism, then we've got a real problem. And it's a terribly strong statement. I wish she'd gone on to say the only person really who's made any sense in this whole argument and who we should all look up to and who should be given a damehood is, of course, the authoress JK Rowling, who is the one person who's spoken out with great clarity on the way she thinks about the issue, which has given millions of people a focus.
I mean, yes, and for speaking out, she received death threats, rape threats, and all sorts of horrific things on social media. Kai, I mean, you know, Kemi's words are always very strong. She never beats about the bush, does she? But she's saying with the trans ideology in particular, not only has it harmed kids, often something they can't do anything about now, but it's silencing people. People that wanted to protect kids were shut up because of an ideology, not even a factual medical thing, an ideology, the cult of transgenderism.
I don't accept that. I don't accept that people who don't believe in transgenderism or don't believe in trans children have not been given a platform, because they have. They have been allowed to air their views. We've had this discussion for years and years, and I mean, the one thing that really gets me about this debate is that this is a tiny proportion of the population.
This is true.
Transgender children, for instance, puberty blockers, are administered to only around 100 children at the minute in the UK. That's out of, what, 60 plus million
I
people.
totally agree with that. A tiny proportion, but supported by millions of voices that are encouraging it to develop and develop and develop.
But that's totally acceptable in the way that, you know, the fact is, if somebody, as a child, feels that they are a different gender or believes that they are a different gender, they have the time over those many years, and the fact is waiting lists mean that that is many years, to transition socially and then to transition medically if they feel...
But their brains aren't properly developed, are they?
No, but the fact is the regret rates of a transition surgery are much, much lower than any other surgery that you would see. So the fact... What really gets me is that we keep talking about this issue, and what it does is make transgender children, transgender people feel isolated, alone, and, you know, hurled out of society because we keep talking about it.
I don't accept that.
In a way that is...
Because, look, if there's a transgender child, you've got to obviously accommodate their feelings and their view and all that, but they're getting an awful lot of support from an awful lot of adults, and their brains aren't developed when they're 12, 13 or 14, and I think they're getting too much support from people who I think are irresponsible to push it because it's an untested science. Now, the story that really shocked me last week, because when I'm saying people in senior positions are complicit in all this, is two parents who went to the prize giving at their school to see their daughter receive a reading prize. And when the award was announced, it was given to a boy called Tommy, who came onto the stage dressed as a boy, but it was this couple's daughter. And they had no idea that when she got to school, she changed her identity and she transgendered. And the teachers knew that happened, but the parents didn't. And that's the sort of thing, I think, that we've got to examine very carefully to see where the levels of responsibility in adults rests.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. The fact is, I think that if a child wants to transition, it needs to be with the consent of parents.
Absolutely.
It needs to be with the doctor's consent, multiple doctors perhaps. But the fact is, you know, at the minute, the debate we're having dissuades that. It dissuades anybody having a reasonable conversation about what makes sense. Now, you say 12, 13, you know, what is the age when we accept that somebody knows their own gender? What is the age where we accept that somebody knows their own self? I mean, is it 18?
The scientific evidence...
16?
Scientific evidence which came up last week is that the human brain isn't really properly developed until the early 20s, perhaps 22 or 23.
Well, maybe we should raise the drinking age, the driving age.
No, no.
Where do you stop?
You're making a very, very serious decision when you want to change the very gender which you wish to be recognised in life, and that, you know, that's a huge decision, and it should be thoroughly investigated and thoroughly discussed before kids are going to school changing gender. Their parents don't even know about it. That's wrong.
Unfortunately, gentlemen, we have run out of time.